Hi, how you doing? Well, it's been a beautiful day as usual, and today I want to talk about identity. So, what is identity? Well, identity is a way of making things a part of you, okay? Which is fine, okay? Because that's part of what being human is about, okay? It's part of what the ego's plan is. The ego wants to get bigger, and in order to get bigger, it makes everything a part of it, okay? And that means that everything that you do and everything that you think you are is a part of this thing. Okay? All right? Like, for instance, are you unhappy? Well, that's because your ego wants you to be unhappy. Okay? Are you sad? That's because the ego wants you to be sad. Because the ego wants to control you. And the easiest way to do that is through unhappiness. Okay? And so, what we try and should do is try and let that go. And this identifying with everything is part of the problem. Okay? When you're born and you're a little boy or a little girl, you identify with your possessions. You identify with the way things feel. Okay? When you hurt your knee, you identify with the pain. Okay? And so on and so forth. And that continues on as you grow up. And these identifications are basically bad for you, okay? Because that's not who you are. You think that's who you are. You think that I am a man living in a place who had this experience and that experience and so on and so forth. It means you identified with a sex, you've identified with a place, you've identified with what your name is, okay? And so all your life you're going to call yourself John Smith, okay? Or Betty whatever, okay? And that's just the way it is. And that's who you think you are. And the problem with who you think you are is that's not you at all, okay? And whenever we believe in something that's not true, what happens? Suffering. That's what. So, anyway, try and understand that this identifying with everything, okay? And we can look at, say, your thoughts. You identify with your thoughts. You think you are your thoughts. You think your thoughts make you who you are. Okay? And, that's just the way it is. And that includes your emotions. Everything going on inside your head, okay, is who you are. That's what you think. Okay? But that's just not true. And we identify with everything else too, like separateness, being a separate, distinct person. Okay? And I call them illusions here. Okay? And that's what they are. They're illusions. Okay? But you're identifying with the illusion. Okay? And that's a problem. Okay? You're not separate. You think you are, you have identified with being that. Okay? And it's not your fault. Everyone does it. There's no way of getting away from it. Okay? But once you realize that, then you can start to wake up. You can start to get free. Now, what this means is that this way of making everything into yourself is bad for you. The ego makes everything into itself because it wants to be big. Okay? And if it can't be big, then it wants you to be small. So it feels big. Okay? And so, therefore, that's how it works. And this is where the unhappiness comes from. Okay? You have a car or a house or a wife or kids, and you say, these are my kids, these are my wife, this is my car, this is my house, this is my land. You're taking possession of it. You may not think that's what you're doing because language is tricky, okay? But that's what you're doing. You're taking possession of these things, okay? And by taking possession of them, you are identifying with them. And when your wife leaves, okay, it feels like someone took some of your self out of you. They ripped your heart out, right? Or when your kids grow up and leave, which they're going to, no matter how long they stay in your basement, eventually they'll get their shit together and they'll leave, okay? And that's just part of life. And so you're unhappy because now you're an empty nester, which is fine, okay? But that's not who you are. And as long as we are identifying with all these things, like fear, okay, which we do identify with, because fear is part of being human, okay? People say, what's your greatest fear? Okay? What do you fear the most? And then you say what it is. Spiders. Okay? Or whatever it is. Okay? Being caught in an elevator. Another person who's going to hurt me. Whatever that fear is, you identify with it. You make it part of who you are. Okay? And it becomes part of your identity. Therefore, when the fear comes knocking, which it's going to, you can answer. Okay? But the fact is, fear is part of an illusion of separateness. And this separateness illusion, you're identifying with it. You're identifying with the idea that you are a discrete individual, distinct from anyone else on this planet, distinct from everything else in the universe. Okay? And that's just not true. And as long as we are identifying with all these things, okay, then we're going to be unhappy. That's just the way it is. And so the way out of being unhappy is to stop identifying with everything. Okay? That's just the way it is. And that includes the place you live, the things you did when you were growing up, your name, your sex, and so on. All your experiences. You identify with those experiences. That's how you make yourself who you are, by identifying with things. Okay? Wait, did you go to a rock concert when you were a kid? And did you pick up a guitar and start playing afterwards because you were inspired by, whoever, the Grateful Dead, or, whoever it was? And now you have identified with that. You are a rocker, did you say to yourself? Okay? Or whatever. Okay? Or maybe you identified with a political party. And so you say to yourself, I am a Republican or a Democrat. Okay? And so that becomes part of your identity. Okay? You cannot be John Smith without being a rocker or being a Republican. Okay? And in order to be you, you have to be these things too, which makes you unhappy. And that includes everything else. Okay? There's an old saying by some very wise Buddhist person, and this is what it is. Loss and gain are one to me. Pleasure and pain are one to me. Okay? In other words, these things, the pleasure of playing guitar, or the pleasure of sex, or the pleasure of all these things, okay, which you identify with that, okay, it's connected to the pain. It's part of the pain, because in actual fact, it's sensations, okay? Now we have this pain, and we have this pleasure, and we try to get the pleasure and avoid the pain. It's the attraction and aversion part of being human that allows you to have a life, okay? You want things and you don't want other things. You run away from the bad things, the uncomfortable things, the things that make you feel bad. And you run towards the good things. Okay? That's what you do. Or you push away the bad and you bring in the good. Okay? Because that's part of identifying with things. You identify with that pleasure. Okay? Now let's say you have a beautiful wife and you love having sex with her. Okay? And then she leaves after, say, 20 years, and that pleasure is no longer a part of you because that's just the way it is. And so you are unhappy because that pleasure was ripped out of you by your wife. Okay? Now that's just one little tiny thing. Okay? But by saying pleasure and pain are one to me, fame and shame are one to me, gain and loss are one to me. So many people in this world are identified with gain. Okay? And when you identify with gain and your stocks take a plunge, oh my God, it's terrible. Oh my God, I want to kill myself. Okay? That's just the way it is. These things which we have identified with, which is like we identify with good and we don't identify with bad. Okay? And we identify with power. And we don't identify with being powerless. Okay? And it's just so many things that we identify with and so many things that we're trying to push away. The things that we want, we identify with those. We want things. And we identify with those things that we want. Okay? Like a car or a woman or whatever it is we want. And this makes us unhappy because it's not you. Simple as that. It's not who you are. You think you're a man. You think you have identified with being a man. You're masculine. Or you've identified with being a woman. You're feminine. Okay? Which is fine. Yeah. Okay, that's the body you were given. But this body is not who you are. As long as you identify with your body, you look at your face in the mirror and you say, that's me. Or you work out and you make, muscles and you say, look how strong I am. Or whatever it is. Okay? That's the way we do it. Okay? And we identify with that strength. And when the strength goes, because we're old, suddenly, after 60 years, it's like, oh, my life's over. And unhappiness ensues. Okay? So we have to not identify with these things. We have to stop trying to make everything into ourselves. Okay? The fact is, you are everything already. Because you are part of God. And God is everything. That's just the way it is. But by identifying with these things, by putting them into who you are, by making them your identity, okay? It's not going to be good. So, try and accept that you are not a man or a woman. Try and accept that you are not a rocker or a Republican. Try and accept that you are a soul. I know it's hard, but I know you can do it too. Because that's life. Okay? We progress through life. Okay? And that progression includes the spiritual path. You're going to have progression on your spiritual path whether you want to have progression or not, because that is the way life is. Okay? As you start to lose things, which we do, we lose things. Okay? That's what life is losing things. Everything is going to go. Everything is going to be lost because you're going to die. Or at least you think you're going to die. The fact is you're not going to die because you are a soul, and souls don't die. Have you ever seen somebody when they were dying and suddenly it's over and something in their eyes It just sort of disappears. You can see it, feel it. That's something is you. Okay? That something is the soul. And it's departing into the formless dimension through the doorway that you have. Okay? So, this self that you have made, and that's what you've done, you've made yourself, because that's the human condition. Okay? Isn't you. And it's the thing that's going to die, not the soul. Not who you really are. Now, I know language is really tricky. It's really hard to try and figure out what these words mean, okay? But basically, when you say, my soul, you're trying to possess the soul, okay? And you think you are possessing it, and you think you can trade it away to the devil for, something. Because you think it's not part of you. You think it's just this thing. I mean, the fact of the matter is religion has done a great job of fooling everybody into thinking things that aren't true. Okay? You don't have a soul. You are a soul. Okay? And so that's just the way it is. And as long as you think that you are a man or a woman who happens to be a computer programmer or happens to be a doctor who happens to be whatever, then you're going to be unhappy. That's just the way it is. So, what we try and do, want to try and do, okay, we don't have to do anything, is to let it go. Okay? Let go of identifying with everything. Let go of thinking that your house is you. I know we don't like the idea of that. We don't like the idea that we're thinking that, but that's what you're thinking. Okay? Because you're coming home. And therefore the home is part of you. The home can't exist without you, can it? No. And these words are so tricky. Okay? But that's what it is. And we have to accept the isness. Simple as that. And as long as we fight against the isness, which we do, by saying, it's my soul, okay? Or my car, or my wife, or my kids. It's not your kids, it's not your wife, it's not your car, it's not your house, because it can be lost. Everything that you have can be taken away. That's the fact of the matter. Okay? And it's going to get lost because that's just the way it is. Okay? So therefore, it cannot be yours. You go and you buy something and you think, I own this. This is now mine. I take possession of it. Okay? But then a few years later, you're like, what happened to it? Where is it? It's gone. Because that is the nature of material. It's all going to go. And as long as we're identified with that material possession, then when it goes, we're going to feel bad. Just like when your wife leaves you and you have identified with the sex and the good feelings that brings you, and you've identified with everything that comes with having a relationship. You think that relationship is part of who you are. You think that sex is part of who you are. You think everything that's gone on with that woman is part, or that man, is part of who you are. And so when they leave and they tear out a part of your heart, okay, you're going to be unhappy. Okay? And you're going to say, I'm sad. You're going to possess the emotion of sadness. You're going to possess the emotion of unhappiness. That's just the way it is. Okay? So, in order not to be that, in order not to do that, in order not to feel that badness, we have to let these things go. We have to accept what is. What is? Well, for one thing, you're not a person. you don't have long hair. Long, beautiful hair. Look at my long, beautiful I can attach myself to this hair and I can treasure it and think about it, and it's going to lead me nowhere. Okay? But that's what people do. We attach ourselves to our physical properties. Okay? This face. Oh, look at this beautiful face. And so on and so forth. Okay? Because we're identifying with the face. And when the face starts to change, which it is, I mean, let's take a good look at this face. Okay? Look at the wrinkles. Okay? And this dark mark up here. And it's changing. It's constantly changing. My cheeks have dropped. Look at that. They've dropped down. They used to be up here. And I can be unhappy about that. I can be so sad that my cheeks have dropped. And I can be so sad that I've got this dark mark on my skin. And I can be so sad about all of that. But I'm not, because I am not identified with a face. I'm not identified with anything. And you need to not be identified with those things too. Happiness, real happiness, is about letting go. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying that if you love something, you have to let it go. Well, you love you, don't you? You love your face, or you hate it. And you have to let it go. It's not who you are. It's just an outer personification of what you think you are. Okay, that's it. As long as you are attached to your face, the way it looks at this moment in time and into the future, then you're going to be unhappy when it changes. And it's going to change because everything changes. The world is impermanent, okay? Which means it's not going to be there. Your face is going to fall. That's part of life. And as long as you're identified with that face, identified with the beauty or the handsomeness of your face, then you're going to be unhappy when it does fall. What you need to identify with is the soul that you are. That's what you need to identify with. As long as you're identified with anything else, you're going to have unhappiness. Okay? I love everyone on this planet. And in a way, I am identified with the love. Okay? Because that's just a thing. Okay? But the love can never go. The love can never be gone. So therefore, I can never feel unhappiness because I am identifying with love. Okay? That's it. As long as you or anyone is identified with these things, then you are going to feel unhappiness. You are going to feel suffering. Okay? That's just the way it is. So in order to not be identified with these things, okay, we need to accept that it's not you. Accept that you are not a person. Accept that you are not a person. That's it. And once you do that, by looking at your thoughts, by understanding that you wouldn't say these things to yourself, would you? No, of course not. Therefore, it's not you that's saying it. Right? Because you love you, right? So therefore, why would you say bad things to you? You wouldn't. Right? And you wouldn't say bad things to your lovely, wonderful wife that you love so much, would you? No. So why are you saying them to yourself? Because it's not you that's doing the same. And these are thoughts I'm talking about, not words, but it's just the same thing. Okay? So this identification is a trap. Okay? And it's a trap that is so part of everything that it's hard to understand where it's coming from. Okay? But it's coming from the ego. That's where it's coming from. So in order to be free, we need to accept that that's what it is. We need to accept that I am not a man. Yes, I have the outward veneer of a man. Okay? But my body is not me. I am a soul. And when this body dies, which it will, no matter what medical science comes up with, it's going to die. I will be free as a soul. I won't be caught in the death of myself, which is something that doesn't even exist. I know it's hard to think that yourself doesn't exist. I get that. But you have to realize that that is so. The self is a lie that you were told as a child, okay? Along with the lie of everything else you were told as a child, okay? That's just the way it is. Not by people who were just trying to deceive you, but by people who thought things were the way they were when they weren't that way. Right? So, try and understand who it is that's identifying with these things. Okay? And most likely it's a person. And you are not a person. As long as you think you are a person, then you're going to be unhappy. You're going to suffer. Okay? That's the way it is. So what we need to do is accept that that's not you. You're not the one making the thoughts. You're not the one who has a neurosis or thinks he's perverted or whatever else it is that's going on with you. That's not you. You think it's you. Okay? I've had people come up to me and say, I can't stop the thinking. The incredible sexual thinking. If I meet somebody, I just start thinking sexual things about them, which really ruins everything I'm trying to have with that person. Okay? So, try and look at the world as it is instead of as you want it to be. Okay? And look at your own conglomeration of identities. Because that is what it is. You have conglomerated all these identities into you in order to feel whatever it is you're trying to feel. In order for your ego to feel whatever it's trying to feel, which is big. Okay? And so we need to let these identities go. You're not a man or woman. It's just not so. You are a soul, which doesn't have a sex. Nor does God have a sex either. We sexualize God by making it a he or a her. Okay? It doesn't exist. It's a lie. And so is the idea that you are identifying with these things. Okay? I mean, it's part of normal life to identify as a woman or identify as a man. I don't know if you've noticed that some people are not identifying as either, because that's the way the society's going. So much pain and suffering has been laid upon being a woman or being a man that they don't want to be that. Even though they have a vagina and boobs and everything, there's too much suffering laid upon them to be that. Okay? Because of the way we treat women. Okay? So they say, I don't want to be a woman. I want to be a man. And they get a sex change operation. Why are they saying that? Why are they doing that? Because they can't stand it. Okay? And the pressure, the immense pressure on being a man, okay, or woman, to fit into society's norms, okay? These things are part of your identity, and the pressure's not going anywhere. It's going to continue pressing. So, we have to accept what is. And what is that you are a soul, and you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not the fear or the separateness that you think you are. You're identified with that separateness. You've identified with that fear. You've identified with the sadness. You've identified with the anger. I am angry. Which means I am the anger. That's an identification of yourself as anger. And you take that into yourself and you say, that's who I am. And you walk around all day with this angry ideas in your head. And somebody pulls your trigger and you get angry. Right? Isn't that what happens? Of course it is. Okay? Or sad. Or whatever it is that's going on in your head. But there's a way to be free of that. And that is to accept. That's it. Accept that you are a soul. Accept that your thoughts are not coming from you. Once you've made that recognition of who you really are, then things will start to fall into place and you'll start to see where you're attached and where you're identifying with all these things. Well, clock on the wall is telling me it's time to go. I love you all. Try not to identify with these things. Try to realize who you are and accept if you want to be free. All right, well, I love you all because you're me, because we're all part of one thing. And that one thing is God and the universe. Everything in the universe is part of you, and you are part of everything in the universe. You cannot separate yourself from me or from anyone. Because regardless of how much you think you're a solitary being, okay, it's not true. It's a lie. You are an immortal, infinite being that is part of God. And as long as you're identifying with something else besides that, you're going to suffer. I don't want you to suffer, but that is the way it is. Well, it's been lovely to talk to you. Please, if you have any questions or comments about anything I've said, I may not be right. I could be completely wrong. Tell me so. Okay? Or tell me what thoughts and feelings have come up in you while you watch this video. I would love to hear anything that you want to say about anything with regard to awakening. Well, have a great day and a great life.